Hello everybody, welcome to this edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner. As we talk about anything and everything that is geek, whether it be TV, comics, movies, or video games. And this week we continue with our Godzilla Month with the best with the best and worst versions of the actual character of Godzilla. And like I said, I've iterated before, I said this special series is not only in honor of commemorating 60 years of Godzilla. Sorry, I'm kind of crooked here. 60 years of Godzilla is also commemorating the release of the new Godzilla movie, which hopefully, but if everything going as planned, is probably this video release is probably already out in theaters right now. And hopefully by now I've gone and seen it, me and my wife. But to commemorate the release of the movie and 60 years of Godzilla, we continue with Godzilla Month with the best, and we continue with the best and worst versions of the character of Godzilla himself. I mean, last time was some of his worst opponents. This time, I say it's going to be like best and worst versions of him. I mean, I say over 60 years, he's gone through a lot of different takes, a lot of different looks and versions, and a lot of different takes. I said a lot of different takes on him, and then how he acts and everything, and how many different versions of him there are. I mean, looking versions there are of him and everything. And I'm just going to go over without getting in too much time. I'm going to discuss some of the best and the worst looking versions of versions in general of Godzilla himself. And I'm going to start off with the best versions of Godzilla. And with that, I'm going to start off with the honorable mention, and probably you might as well say is an unofficial number 6 on the list. The Millennium Godzilla 2000. I mean, as y'all know, the Heisei version ended, and they started the Millennium version after about a 5-year hiatus and one failed American version later. I'll get to that later. They managed to make Godzilla Millennium or Godzilla 2000, whichever version. Either way, you'd be right. And they redesigned him to still look like classic Godzilla, but with a little bit more to him. And that he looks more rigid. If you know, he looks more rigid and jagged. His spikes are longer, way longer, especially that middle one in the middle of his back. They're way longer than they used to be. His breath, I mean, that look you saw in that version of Godzilla, he was like, he was smart, but not goofy smart. Like he went on raw instinct. But for some reason in the movie, they never really explained it. He was drawn to energy sources, and he would destroy them. He would destroy energy sources, and never really explained why. They went into that also in Godzilla versus Megaguirus, which also featured a Millennium look. He had orange breath and almost purple scales, and he was green, which was different from Godzilla before because he had blue, more rounded off fins, and his breath was blue, and he was charcoal gray always. I said this was the first time he was ever green, as opposed to a lot of merchandise which had him being green. Matter of fact, one version that's actually on this in this show was actually green, but we'll get to that later. But before this one was ever green, we'll get that in a minute. But as I said, for some reason they showed the movie he would destroy energy sources for whatever oddball reason. Why, they never really explained it. He did the same thing in Godzilla versus Megaguirus. I mean, they showed him attack Tokyo in black and white. They showed almost a recreation of that attack with this new looking Godzilla. Attack Tokyo, left it in cinders, just like he did in 54, like he always did. And then in the 60s, they built a nuclear plant. He reappeared again to destroy the nuclear plant. Then they said years later, and he just wandered back into the sea. They said, and then years later, they said they built a plasma plant, run on plasma energy. He reappeared again in Japan to destroy that. They never explained why he was drawn to energy so much that he wanted to destroy it. I don't know if they think it was like a power that was rivaling his or what. I don't know. They never explained it, but it was an interesting angle. And I think that to me, I mean, he looked intimidating. He looked fierce and mean, and just like he should. He looked monstrous, just like he should, like he always should. To me, that was one of his best looks. And they actually quit using this exact same look in Megaguirus, but they actually used a look very similar to that, kind of an almost redesigned looking version of that in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS. They actually showed it. Like I said, they kept rewriting origin stories in the series, but you look at him, he still had about the same head, but it was maybe a little bit smaller, a little more rounded. The fins were the same, except maybe instead of so spread out, they were a little bit more isolated. But it was essentially, to me, it was the same Godzilla. It was the same take on that look. And to me, I always liked that look. He looked like Godzilla. He just looked great in that. And I'm gonna say it right now. Forget the honorable mention. He's number 6 on my list. and for number 5 on my list, he's another one of my favorites. Is I don't know if you see this right. The Final Wars Godzilla. Now, I don't know much about this version of Godzilla other than the fact that he was, and they teased at the end of Godzilla Tokyo SOS that they had sampled, where they had took Godzilla's DNA from those bones in there, where they created Mechagodzilla. I explained a few videos ago that the third Mechagodzilla was made with a DNA computer of the bones of the original Godzilla from 1954. Well, the way they teased there is that they extracted some DNA from those bones, and that they were in the midst of cloning him. And that's the only thing I could think of, is that Godzilla the Final Wars Godzilla is a clone of the original 1954 Godzilla, only slimmer. Because to me, he looked a lot slimmer than he usually is. And to me, I love that look. For that very reason, it looked like the original 1954 Godzilla, only his head was a little bit more peaked looking, and he was more fierce, and he had more fierce countenance to his face, and more of a fierce look to his face, almost more dragon-like than previous incarnations of Godzilla. And I liked it. I didn't particularly like how he acted in a lot of it, and that it was ham and kind of the old hammy dance around, act like a human being type mess he did in the Showa era, in the latter part of the Showa era. But he still looked cool, and he still knew how to fight. Like, he knew how to fight, and he was smart, he was intelligent. And also the fact that he took out the 98 version, and he took out the 1998 American version in 16 seconds. Yes, I did time it with a stopwatch, but in one 16-second scene, he took him out. Just took him out with a couple of moves. He destroyed the 98 version, which they had redubbed Zilla for this. But like I said, I just like that version of Godzilla, not because of the camp, but because he was Godzilla. He acted like Godzilla. He's smart. He was strong. He was everything Godzilla should be, and that's why I like that. That's why number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list is one that is definitely one of my favorites, and that is the Godzilla from Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah Giant Monster All Out Attack. I don't know if you can see that real good. See that there? To me, and I said I like him. If you can see there real good, look at his eyes. No pupils. That's the one I was talking about an episode or two ago. that he looked like a zombie. He's supposed to represent the. They said that one he appeared just for that one movie, and he was supposed to be a representation of all the Japanese that had died, or the Japanese men, or all men, period, that died at sea. They're supposed to represent their restless souls that died in war, and they were coming back for vengeance. And you could almost get that vibe about him, that he looked like a ghost. I mean, I'm going to say this is probably the biggest, most muscled up Godzilla I've ever seen. And from certain angles, his head looks more like that of a Tyrannosaurus Rex than it does Godzilla. But I liked it. I liked it. He was just didn't care about nothing. Just destroyed everything he come across. I mean, just destroyed everything he came across. And also, he was smart. Now, they showed one part of the movie when he was fighting King Ghidorah, not quite grown up yet. He had took a bite out of his neck. Mothra, he was there trying to bite down his neck, basically trying to bite it off. Mothra comes up behind him and thinking he's going to sneak up on him, but he doesn't. Godzilla winds up swinging his tail and knocking him to the ground. Winds up knocking him to the ground and doesn't even look at it. And they show overall he just dominates everything, all the way up to the end. He dominates everything. He's just the fiercest, meanest, one of the most powerful iterations of Godzilla I've ever seen. Didn't much like the breath effect though, because it looked like one little stream of energy as opposed to like this big wide breath of energy. Mainly because I said that's the one flaw in that design of Godzilla. His jaw was too square, and his jaw didn't open up but just so much. Hence why there was only like a little bit of breath coming out at a time. There's only like one little stream of breath coming out of his mouth. And I didn't much like that. It looked like a stream of water being shot out of his mouth. But I didn't much like that. But I did like Godzilla, that version of Godzilla as a whole. And to me, that will always be one of my number one favorite iterations of Godzilla. And that's why but that's why he made it number 3 on my list. And number 4 on my list, I meant to say. Number 3 on my list is the one that started it all, Godzilla 54. I mean, there's not much, there ain't much you can pretty much say. It pretty much speaks for itself. It's the original Godzilla that started it all, and pretty much inspired about every other monster movie after it, except for the ones that came before it, obviously. But so essentially gave true birth to the monster movie genre, giant monster movie genre. And and pretty much was the foil for every Godzilla design after that. Godzilla Raids Again and everyone after that. And I said, I'll always love that design, that unnerving stare like this. Like he just looking down at everybody. That's about the only monster you ever truly saw that didn't look like he. The only Godzilla design you ever saw that didn't look like he was either just staring, just looking like this, or everything. Then just like he's leaning over, looking like he was just walking along like this, and he was just looking down at everybody. I mean, and also he was the one and only Godzilla to ever truly annihilate all of an entire city. He was the only one that ever really truly destroyed Tokyo, left it a pile of ash. I mean, he was meant to be frightening, and that's what he was to that generation. He was frightening. He was what he meant to be, a force of nature, kind of like what they're trying to go back to in this movie. And that's why I like that one so good. I like that one so good because he's a force of nature like he should be. And that's why he came number 3. And as I was saying, I said that's what they're basically trying to do with this new one. That leads me to number 2 on my list, soon to be number 1 on my list. The new Godzilla 2014, the one from the new movie one from the new movie coming out this month. He is just there's no words that can anybody describe. No, he is Godzilla. He is what 98 should have been. He is what the 1998 version should have been. Big, massive, powerful, doesn't run away from anything. I mean, look at this. And they talked to the director the other day in an interview about making him scary again. Does that scare you? It's pretty. That is Godzilla right there. That's how Godzilla should be. Fearsome, scary. I mean, I'm excited. I mean, this is a Godzilla that not only, I mean, he tweaked him here and there in his appearance and everything, but he still looks like Godzilla. He still looks like how Godzilla ought to look. And to me, I'm just so excited when I saw that first trailer, or 2, or 3. I mean, it's just awesome to see a Godzilla that doesn't run from the army, that just takes on the army and just rough shots through cities like he's supposed to. And to see that he is so much bigger than he used to be. I mean, the average Godzilla height was probably like 80 meters tall, between 50 to 80 meters tall. This one is 120 to 150 meters tall. He's huge compared to the city. I mean, I've seen movie posters. He is way bigger than the tallest building. He's huge. And I said, it's gonna be a good movie. And I said, I hope by now that I've seen this, I've already seen it since I made this video. I hope I already seen it. I mean, it just looks spectacular. And I said, I already love this version of Godzilla. I already love it because he already acting like Godzilla. It just excites me to see. I mean, he is Godzilla. He is the classic Godzilla in every sense of the word. It has all the feeling of the very first Godzilla from 1954. It has all the feeling of it. And I said, and that's why he made number 2 on my list. Because, like I said, and to me, I'm going to tell you, he's running neck and neck with the next one on the list. The number 1 on the list, the best Godzilla. The 90s Godzilla. He's running right now. The new Godzilla 2004 is running neck and neck with the 90s version here. I mean, I love the 90s version. I'm gonna say it. 90s version is what made everybody forget about all the camp, all the dancing, flying drop kicks, using his breath as a rocket, just all the campy, cartoony acting Godzilla of the 60s and latter 60s and into the 70s. He made him forget all about it. It made him back into what he was in the beginning, a monstrous force of nature, created by the nuclear tests in the 1950s. And I said that to me is what makes him the best. And also, I said to me, they made him the best Godzilla. He was smart, fast. It was smart and strong, powerful. Most powerful iteration of Godzilla I've seen up to this new one. And bigger than all the other ones up to this new one. I mean, the other one was like about 100, almost getting up there to like 100 meters tall. He's getting on up there to where this new Godzilla is. And then in the last appearance of the Heisei series, his final form getting exposed to a eruption that bombarded him with pure uranium. It made his son grow into his normal size, into a junior, almost a teenager look, and made Godzilla into this blackened skin, glowing orange breath, super powerful monster. That, by the way, in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, was his most powerful you'd ever seen Godzilla be in a movie. The most powerful, even more so than Final Wars. You saw him be super powerful, but he may end up getting overtaken by this new Godzilla. He may get taken, and only time will tell. Only time will tell if if this 2014 version overtakes the 90s version as being the best version of Godzilla yet. Because the 90s right now, to me, the 90s version is still the best, number one best version, with the 2014 version closing fast. But and all that aside, I said there are also over the past 6 years there's also been bad version of the Godzilla. I said I can't, and I hate to say I haven't got pictures of at least one of them on my list. I will try my best to show you some of the worst versions of Godzilla, and fortunately I managed to keep this list to about 4, so they won't that many. And start off things with number 4 on the list, the Hanna-Barbera version of Godzilla. Though the design looks good, it was horrible. It was a terrible series, a terrible iteration of Godzilla. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, especially they had that Godzuki character in it. I don't know what he was supposed to have been. But I just didn't like that version of Godzilla very well. The very few times I've seen him, I just didn't like that version of Godzilla. It wasn't Godzilla to me. So, like I said, he was the only other version to be green other than 2000 version or any versions in the comics. But like I said, he just wasn't that good a version to me, and that's why he made it on the worst list. And number 3 on the list of the worst is I kind of don't have a picture of him, but it's the 60s version of Godzilla. And what I mean by that is the version that you saw in, essentially the version that you saw like in Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, Godzilla versus Sea Monster, Godzilla versus Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters, ones like that. The head, I mean, he looked horrible in those movies. The body was alright, but the head looked too frog-like. He looked too much like a frog in the face. Particularly in Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. I mean, he looked too amphibian-like. I mean, they corrected that in the 70s, definitely, like with Godzilla versus Megalon and Mechagodzilla and all those. A lot of ones in the 70s, they definitely changed his look a lot. But in the 60s, it was terrible. It was just terrible looking. He looked like a frog. And he didn't look like Godzilla. He looked like a frog. And like I said, I'm glad they changed it. I say it just looked terrible, and that's why it made it on my list. That, and I didn't like it. I didn't like all the hammy acting, like the jig, dancing the jig, and the man. I mean, and there's a lot of stuff that happened in the 70s, like the flying drop kicks and the stuff like that, and Godzilla versus Godzilla versus Hedorah, so ones like that. I mean, he did a lot of campy stuff, and there's I just wish he didn't. I just didn't like that either, but I mainly just didn't like the look, so, and that's why it made it number 3 on my list. And number 2 on my list of the worst version of Godzilla ever is the version from King Kong versus Godzilla. Need I say more? Look how ugly he looks. I mean, there are other pictures on there. I wanted to get one from the side view just so you can see how ugly he looked. I mean, and that one, they tried to make him look more dinosaurian. I mean, I admire that, but it looked too clunky. I mean, it's bad when you hear the guy doing like that. You hear, boom, boom, boom. You hear the rubber buckling. Boom, boom, boom. Well, every time he moves, you hear, boom, boom. It's loud. I mean, the suit design was terrible. The head design was terrible. He was, he didn't act like Godzilla. He really didn't act like Godzilla, the Godzilla we all know. The Godzilla we all like. And he looked like, I mean, it was more done as a comedy than it was a straight-laced Godzilla movie. And to me, that's just not right. I mean, like I said, if they ever remade King Kong versus Godzilla, hopefully Godzilla looks like he does in this new movie. Godzilla looks like he does in this new movie, and King Kong looked like he did in the Peter Jackson like he looked in the Peter Jackson version. I would love to see that happen. I really would, but until then, it's not one of my favorites, and this look is definitely not one of my favorites either. So definitely, that's why it made it number 2 on my list. And I think y'all pretty much know what number 1's going to be before I even show it to you, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. The 1998 Roland Emmerich, quote-unquote, Godzilla. This was not Godzilla at all. It was, as they call him, Gino, Godzilla in name only. It was not Godzilla at all. I mean, definitely not Godzilla. He didn't act like him. He may have roared like him and looked similar to him. It was not him. I mean, you don't have a Godzilla that runs from the flipping military. It runs from the military every time he gets shot at. And his so-called breath ain't nothing but heat breath. It causes stuff to burst into flames like he's spitting something, like he's shooting gas out of his mouth. Natural gas out of his mouth to create a fire, create a blowtorch. That's essentially how they treated his breath. Power breath, they called it. And then I'm gonna say it right now. I'm gonna spoil it for you. So if you don't want to hear it, close your ears. They kill him at the end. Kill him. And I know at the very end they leave it right wide open for another sequel because you see another one, an egg that was missed. Yeah, it laid eggs. But it came to New York not to trash the city, but to feed and to breed. And that's essentially what it did. It laid about 200 eggs, all of which was destroyed except for one, conveniently, that didn't get blown up, thinking they were going to do another one. And really, all it did was lead into an animated series that was alright. It was pretty good. But still not Godzilla. I'm going to say it. The animated series had more of the spirit of the true Godzilla in it than this movie did. It had more of the spirit of the true Godzilla in it, and that he acted like Godzilla. He may not look like Godzilla, but they tried their best to almost make him almost look like him. And also in this movie, he acted like Godzilla in this. I mean, they may have showed him run from the military, but he didn't run from a fight. He didn't run from a fight with any other mutations or aliens or anything. And to me, that's what I liked about the show, other than the fact it was nothing but mutated animals. Nothing was special about them. They didn't shoot no rays from their mouth except for Godzilla, except for Zilla. I mean, and the reason I say Zilla is because they took the character, the Roland Emmerich creature, and actually rebranded him with the new name of Zilla. And he actually first reappeared for the first time since the series went off there. Actually reappeared. He actually looked more like instead of looking like he did in the anime series, he looked more like he did in the movie. Showed up in Godzilla Final Wars. I mean, they made mention of him in Godzilla and Giant Monster All Out Attack. They made mention of him. They actually made mention of him, but they're saying that they were mistaken in thinking it was Godzilla. And in Final Wars, he actually does show up. He shows up attacking Sydney and actually alluded to him eating people and acting more like a monster, or more like a ravenous dinosaur than a fish eater. Of course, they do make mention that he is a fish eater. And I mean, they show him no respect in this movie. Well, I mean, why would you? I mean, he ain't Godzilla. He's an imposter. I mean, for crying out loud, even they take jabs of him in the DVD menu and in the movie and everything. And like I said, even the fact that he was beaten in 16 seconds says something. And like I said, he's not Godzilla. I still make mention that he's not Godzilla. While an enjoyable movie, it's not Godzilla you're watching. It's some lizard posing as Godzilla. And I'll always keep saying that this is not Godzilla. This is the first failed attempt at a Godzilla movie, and it looks like to me that America is about to redeem itself with this new one that's about to come out. Because this Godzilla that's in this movie is Godzilla. It is not no Roland Emmerich crap. It is Godzilla. It is the Toho Godzilla redone for the modern day. And as I said, the Zilla. I said that's what Godzilla. That's why the Roland Emmerich Zilla is at the top of the worst list. It's not Godzilla. And like I said, this new movie, it looks great. And I said it looks like a Toho Godzilla movie, and I can't wait to see it. And hopefully I've done seen it by now when this video airs. But I said it looks like it's gonna be good. Well, what do y'all think? Do y'all agree? Y'all disagree? Did I leave a version out that y'all like? Let me know. And always drop me a comment in the comment box. I would love to hear what y'all think about this. And that's all for this week's edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner. Next week, I'm gonna discuss some of the cultural impact that Godzilla has had over 60 years in film. And that should definitely be interesting. And as always, until next time, like, subscribe, tell your friends. If you have any comments about the show, drop me a comment in the comment box. Y'all have any ideas about things you want to listen to? Here you want to hear me talk about here? Drop me a comment in the comment box. I would love to hear. I'm always looking for some fresh new things and ideas to talk about on this show. I said I would love to hear your ideas. I said I would love to hear your ideas, and I'd love to hear from you. I said you never know when your idea it may end up becoming an episode of Mr. J's Geek Corner. Like I said, I said send me your idea. I would love to hear from you, and I'll see y'all next time.